Get on your knees, boy. You picked the wrong building to case today. 3 white officers surround a distinguished black man in a tailored suit, weapons drawn, one officer's knee already pressing into his back despite no resistance. I said knees! You deaf? This is a federal property! The man's expensive watch catches the light as he's forced down, face pressed against marble. I have identification. Shut it. Hands where we can see them. You think we're stupid? Your kind doesn't belong here. With painful slowness, they allow him to reach inside his jacket. The lead officer sneers, expecting excuses. Instead, the man produces not just ID, but a federal badge. FBI Special Agent in Charge Derek Coleman. This is my operation, and you're all on camera. The officer's faces drain of color as realization dawns. The look in Coleman's eyes promises consequences that will shake an entire system to its foundation. Special Agent in Charge Derek Coleman steps from his unmarked sedan, adjusting his tailored suit as he surveys the gleaming Philadelphia office complex. Late afternoon sun glints off the glass facade, casting long shadows across the parking structure. The Atlas Financial Tower houses 12 corporations, 3 of which are targets in his complex white-collar crime investigation. Coleman checks his watch, 7:15 p.m. Perfect timing. Most employees gone, but the building remains accessible. Security presence minimal. He adjusts his earpiece, maintaining contact with his team stationed discreetly around the perimeter. Initial reconnaissance only tonight, Coleman murmurs. Full operation executes tomorrow at 0900. He enters through the main lobby, projecting the confident air of someone who belongs. No FBI identifiers, no visible credentials. Standard protocol for preliminary assessment. His experienced eyes catalog camera positions, security desk protocols, access points. 15 years investigating financial crimes has honed his ability to move undetected while gathering crucial intelligence. In the security office, Nathan Barrett shifts in his chair, eyes narrowing at the monitor showing Coleman examining the building directory. Barrett, a middle-aged white man with 20 years in private security, prides himself on knowing trouble when he sees it. He watches Coleman take notes on his phone, muttering to himself. Not on my watch, Barrett whispers, reaching for his phone. Coleman proceeds methodically, floor by floor, noting exit stairwells, camera blind spots, potential evidence storage locations. He pauses occasionally, making voice notes on his encrypted phone about security vulnerabilities, information critical for tomorrow's raid. Dispatch, this is Atlas Financial Security. Got a suspicious individual in the building after hours. Barrett speaks into his phone, eyes never leaving the monitor. Male, black, expensive suit, but acting strange. Taking photos, examining security features, possible break-in preparation. Criminal history? The dispatcher asks. Barrett's hesitation lasts only a second. Unknown, but he doesn't look like he belongs here. Our tenants are high-profile financial firms. Need officers immediately. Description? About 6 feet, athletic build, dark skin, shaved head. Moving with purpose, like he's casing the place. Currently on the 14th floor where our highest value tenants are located. As 3 patrol cars silently converge on the building, Coleman continues his assessment, unaware that his race has just transformed routine reconnaissance into a potentially dangerous confrontation. Barrett watches with grim satisfaction as blue uniforms enter the lobby, hands already hovering near their weapons. Coleman rounds the corner near the elevator bank, still dictating observations into his phone. 14th floor houses primary target offices with minimal after hours. Police! Stop right there! 3 officers block his path, the lead officer's hand already resting on his holstered weapon. Coleman freezes, immediately assessing the situation with trained precision. He slowly raises his hands to chest level, palms forward. Good evening, officers, Coleman says, voice measured and calm. Is there a problem? The lead officer, Tanner, steps forward, mid-40s, crew cut, jaw tight with premature judgment. Building security reported suspicious activity. What's your business here after hours? I'm conducting a property assessment. Coleman keeps his response vague by design. Revealing his FBI status now would compromise weeks of careful investigation preparation. The elevator doors open and Barrett steps out, pointing accusingly. That's him. Been wandering the restricted floors for almost 30 minutes. ID, Tanner demands, hand still hovering near his weapon. Coleman nods. I'm going to reach for my wallet. Slowly, Tanner barks, now unsnapping his holster. Barrett interjects. I've never seen him before. He doesn't have clearance for the executive floors. Coleman's expression remains neutral as he carefully extracts his wallet. I'm authorized to be here. By who? Barrett challenges, folding his arms across his security uniform. Tanner takes Coleman's driver's license, deliberately ignoring the federal credentials visible behind it. He studies the license, then looks at Coleman with undisguised suspicion. Mr. Coleman, Tanner emphasizes the civilian address, care to explain what kind of property assessment involves photographing security cameras and exit routes? It's standard procedure, Coleman replies, noting how the second officer has positioned himself to block the stairwell exit. If you'd like to verify— This is my building, Barrett interrupts, his voice rising, and I'm telling you he's trespassing. Coleman raises an eyebrow. Your building? And what evidence, besides my appearance, suggests I don't belong here? Barrett flushes. The way you were behaving was suspicious. Specifically how? Coleman presses. Looking at security features, taking notes, examining restricted areas, Barrett sputters. Tanner hands back only the driver's license. We've received credible reports of suspicious activity. That's enough for us to act. Coleman notes the deliberate omission of his federal credentials. Taking notes on a phone constitutes suspicious activity now? Tanner's eyes narrow dangerously as he steps closer. Final warning. Prove legitimate business here or leave in handcuffs. Coleman calculates his options in a fraction of a second. Revealing his FBI status would terminate the covert phase of a multi-million-dollar financial crimes investigation. The evidence isn't secured. Targets would scatter. Months of work lost. I'll comply, Coleman states evenly, but I need your names and badge numbers first. Tanner hesitates, then recites his information with obvious reluctance. The other officers follow suit, their discomfort visible as Coleman commits each detail to memory. Let's move this to the lobby, Tanner orders, positioning himself unnecessarily close to Coleman. Barrett strides ahead, already playing to an audience that doesn't yet exist. We need to secure the premises, he announces loudly as they enter the elevator. Can't be too careful these days. The lobby holds a handful of late workers, predominantly white professionals gathering their belongings. Heads turn as the officers escort Coleman through the marble expanse. Barrett increases his volume, ensuring everyone hears. Security threat neutralized, folks. Nothing to worry about. Coleman notices smartphones emerging, recording the scene. He keeps his expression neutral but positions himself to ensure his face is clearly visible in their footage. Evidence gathering works both ways. Stand here, Tanner directs Coleman to a spot directly under the brightest lobby lights, maximizing his visibility to onlookers. Empty your pockets, everything on the desk. Is this standard procedure for someone who hasn't been charged with anything? Coleman asks, voice level but carrying clearly to the growing audience. Just do it, Tanner snaps. Coleman complies methodically, placing each item with deliberate precision. Wallet, phone, keys, and a small notebook. Tanner snatches the notebook, flipping through pages of building observations. What's this? Floor plans? Security notes? Tanner holds up the notebook like a trophy. Looks like criminal planning to me. Those are professional observations, Coleman responds. Nothing illegal about noting building features. A crowd forms at a safe distance, murmuring. Barrett puffs up his chest, playing security hero. This is what happens when we stay vigilant, people. This is how we keep this building safe. His pointed glance at Coleman makes the subtext clear. From people like you. Coleman spots two black women among the onlookers, their expressions a mixture of recognition and resignation. They've seen this before, perhaps experienced it themselves. "Are we finished?" Coleman asks after Tanner thoroughly examines each of his possessions. "Or would you like to continue this public spectacle?" "Don't get smart," Tanner warns, handing back Coleman's belongings with deliberate roughness. "We're escorting you out. Don't return without proper authorization." Outside, with no audience but the night security camera, Tanner's professionalism slips further. "Let me make something clear. You'd be smarter not to come back to this building." "Is that a threat?" Coleman asks quietly. "Or are you banning me based on my race rather than any action?" Tanner's face hardens. "I'm warning you about trespassing charges. Next time won't be a friendly conversation." Coleman memorizes every detail of the encounter, the officer's positioning, Barrett's performative security theater, the witnesses, the exact phrasing of Tanner's veiled threat. His FBI training and evidence collection serving a purpose they never anticipated. As the patrol car pulls away, Coleman's phone vibrates with an incoming call. FBI Director Lawson flashes on the screen. "It happened again, sir." Coleman speaks softly into his phone, watching the patrol car disappear around the corner. "Details." Director Lawson's voice is sharp, concerned. Coleman recounts the confrontation with precision. Barrett's unwarranted suspicion, Tanner's escalation, the public humiliation staged for maximum effect. His tone remains professional, but the controlled anger underneath is evident to someone who knows him well. "Your call, Derek," Lawson says. "We can postpone the operation, reassign—" "No." Coleman's response is immediate. "The financial investigation proceeds as planned, but I'm documenting this incident for the secondary protocol." "You're certain? Revealing your status tomorrow will make the point more effectively," Coleman finishes. "They need to see both sides of the coin." Silence hangs between them for a moment, then, "Understood. Full support from this office. Document everything." Coleman ends the call and steps into his sedan, mind already reformulating tomorrow's operation. He opens a secure app on his phone, dictating a detailed report of the incident. Names, badge numbers, timestamps, exact quotes, witness descriptions. The report automatically routes to a specialized FBI Civil Rights Division tracking law enforcement bias incidents. The hotel room serves as a temporary command center. Coleman pins photographs of tomorrow's targets on the wall. Financial executives involved in a complex fraud scheme operating from offices in the Atlas building. Now he adds 3 new photos: Barrett, Tanner, and the patrol officer. 3 months earlier, Coleman sat in Director Lawson's office as surveillance footage played on the screen. Another black FBI agent surrounded by local police during an undercover operation, forced to reveal federal status prematurely. "That's the 5th incident this quarter," Lawson had said, rubbing his temples. "We're losing operations because our agents of color can't complete reconnaissance without being profiled." Coleman had leaned forward. "We need to document these patterns systematically, not just terminate the encounters by revealing credentials." Now, Coleman calls Agent Rivera, his second in command. "We need to adjust tomorrow's parameters. Building security and local police may become hostile factors." "They made you?" Rivera asks. "Not exactly," Coleman explains. "They made assumptions. We'll use that." Meanwhile, Barrett sits in a hotel bar with a colleague, nursing a whiskey. "Had to escort someone out tonight. Suspicious character casing the 14th floor. "Yeah?" his colleague asks without much interest. "You know the type?" Barrett continues, lowering his voice. "Didn't belong there. Trying to look like he fit in, but I wasn't fooled." His colleague shifts uncomfortably. "What exactly made him suspicious?" Barrett hesitates. "Professional instinct. 20 years in security, you develop a sense for these things." Back in his hotel room, Coleman reviews the case files one final time. The Atlas financial investigation represents millions in investor fraud, money laundering through shell companies with connections to organized crime, all operating behind the respectable glass facade Barrett so zealously protects, but only from certain people. Coleman makes his decision. Tomorrow, 2 investigations will proceed simultaneously. The financial crimes operation planned for weeks, and now, documentation of the systemic bias he experienced firsthand. He places his FBI credentials on the nightstand, a symbol of the authority he deliberately withheld tonight. Tomorrow, Coleman tells Rivera over the secure line, we're going to conduct 2 raids instead of 1. Morning light catches on Coleman's FBI windbreaker as he strides through the Atlas building's revolving doors. Behind him, 12 agents in matching gear form a precise, tactical formation. Each wears body cameras. Each carries federal warrants. Their synchronized movement speaks of rigorous training and absolute authority. Coleman wears his credentials openly now, the gold FBI shield gleaming against the dark fabric. His expression remains professionally neutral, but his posture has transformed. This is Special Agent in Charge Coleman in his element, leading a major federal operation. Barrett's coffee cup freezes halfway to his mouth as he watches the security feed. His face contorts in recognition, then alarm. He fumbles for his phone, bypassing dispatch to call Tanner's direct line. The guy from yesterday, he's back, with a team. They're wearing FBI jackets. Coleman approaches the security desk where a different guard sits wide-eyed at the sudden federal presence. Special Agent in Charge Coleman, FBI. He presents his credentials and a folder of documents. These are federal warrants authorizing immediate access to offices listed within. We require master key cards and security protocols. Barrett emerges from the back office, face flushed. Agent, I didn't realize yesterday. There seems to have been a misunderstanding. Coleman turns, his gaze clinical. Mr. Barrett, we require immediate access to the following locations. He slides a document across the counter, ignoring Barrett's attempted explanation. Barrett examines the warrant with trembling hands, then steps away to make another call, this time to Harold Westfield, the building's owner. Sir, the FBI is here with warrants. The man I had removed yesterday, he's leading them. Coleman dispatches his team with efficient precision. Rivera, take the 14th floor, Jackson 15th. Williams, secure the server room. The agents disperse throughout the building as Barrett watches helplessly. His security protocols, so zealously enforced against Coleman yesterday, now rendered meaningless by federal authority. Tanner arrives 7 minutes later, uniform hastily assembled. He freezes at the lobby entrance, watching FBI agents methodically entering offices, carrying evidence bags. His expression shifts from confusion to dawning horror as he spots Coleman directing the operation. Coleman acknowledges Tanner with nothing more than a professional nod before returning to coordination efforts. The power dynamic has completely reversed. Coleman now commands the space where yesterday he was treated as an intruder. Barrett hovers nearby, alternating between nervous glances at Coleman and anxious looks toward the entrance. When the elevator doors open to reveal a distinguished older man in an expensive suit, Barrett's anxiety visibly peaks. Coleman turns just as Harold Westfield, primary target of the financial investigation, steps directly into the FBI's path. Harold Westfield stops mid-stride, his authoritative entrance collapsing as he registers the FBI presence. His eyes dart from the agents efficiently moving through his building to Coleman, who now approaches with deliberate calm. Mr. Westfield. Coleman's tone is professionally detached. I'm Special Agent in Charge Derek Coleman, FBI Financial Crimes Division. What is the meaning of this invasion? Westfield attempts to project outrage, but his voice wavers. 62 years old, silver-haired, with the practiced confidence of wealth, he's unaccustomed to challenges to his authority. Coleman extends the warrant. This details the scope of our investigation into securities fraud and money laundering operations within this building, specifically involving Westfield Holdings, Atlas Investment Partners, and Meridian Trust. Barrett edges closer, sweat beading on his forehead. Mr. Westfield, this is the individual I mentioned from yesterday's incident. Coleman turns his attention to Barrett. Yes, Mr. Barrett. Perhaps you'd like to elaborate on that incident for Mr. Westfield? The one where you reported me as suspicious based solely on my appearance in the building? Barrett's mouth opens and closes silently. Westfield quickly distances himself. I have no knowledge of any incident. Barrett acts independently on security matters. Interesting, Coleman notes. Yet phone records show he called you immediately after I was escorted out. Westfield's composure fractures momentarily before he recovers. I own this building. Security naturally alerts me to concerns. Tanner steps forward. Sir, we were responding to a suspicious person call. Standard procedure. Of course, Coleman acknowledges with calculated politeness. Just as it's standard procedure for the FBI to investigate potential civil rights violations alongside financial crimes. The word violations lands like a physical blow. Barrett pales. Tanner's professional mask slips. Agent Rivera, Coleman calls to his second-in-command, a Hispanic agent efficiently cataloging documents. Please work with Mr. Barrett to access the remaining secured areas. Barrett hesitates, clearly uncomfortable taking directions from Rivera, revealing yet another layer of bias that Coleman silently notes. Westfield attempts to regain control. I have connections in Washington who will be very interested in this overreach. That statement has been recorded, Coleman replies evenly. I'd advise against anything that could be construed as attempting to obstruct a federal investigation. Westfield falls silent, suddenly aware of the body cameras capturing every word, every reaction. The tactical advantage he thought he possessed, connections, influence, Barrett's security measures, all rendered meaningless in the face of federal authority, wielded by the very man they had humiliated. Throughout the building, agents systematically gather evidence of financial crimes while simultaneously documenting yesterday's discrimination. The dual investigation proceeds with methodical precision under Coleman's direction. Westfield, Barrett, and Tanner exchange panicked glances as Coleman's phone rings with a call that visibly changes his expression. Coleman steps aside to take the call, listening intently before responding with a single, decisive, approved. When he returns, his expression carries an additional layer of authority. Mr. Westfield, Officer Tanner, Mr. Barrett. Coleman addresses each man deliberately. We've just received authorization to expand our investigation. I believe you'll all want your lawyers present for what comes next. Expansion? Westfield's voice tightens. The warrant specifically covers financial documentation. This is a separate matter, Coleman clarifies, his tone measured. The FBI Civil Rights Division has authorized a concurrent investigation into potential violations stemming from yesterday's incident. He turns to Barrett. We'll need all security footage from the building, particularly covering my initial visit and the subsequent confrontation. Barrett's face flushes. Some of those cameras might be malfunctioning. Attempting to destroy evidence in a federal investigation is a felony, Coleman responds without hesitation. Agent Michaels specializes in digital forensics. He'll secure your surveillance system immediately to prevent any unfortunate malfunctions. A young agent moves toward the security office as Barrett watches helplessly. Westfield attempts damage control. I had no involvement in whatever occurred yesterday. Your phone received a call from Barrett at 7:43 p.m. immediately following my removal from the premises, Coleman counters. A subpoena for those records has already been approved. The conversation lasted 4 minutes and 12 seconds. Westfield's carefully maintained facade cracks. That was about building security matters. We look forward to confirming that, Coleman replies. A female officer approaches cautiously. Agent Coleman? I was present yesterday but not directly involved. I'd like to provide a statement about what I observed. Thank you, officer. We'll arrange for your formal testimony. Coleman's respectful tone contrasts sharply with his interactions with Tanner, who watches the exchange with growing alarm. Throughout the building, the FBI operation expands visibly. Additional agents arrive, securing evidence related to both investigations. Local media vans begin appearing outside, alerted to the massive federal presence. Tanner steps away, phone pressed to his ear. I need union representation, now. His earlier confidence has evaporated, replaced by the dawning realization of his vulnerability. Coleman receives another call, this time from Director Lawson himself. Their brief exchange confirms the highest levels of the Bureau are now monitoring both aspects of the investigation. The stakes continue rising as Barrett, Tanner, and Westfield watch their professional worlds unraveling. From the corner of his eye, Coleman notices his phone displaying a news alert. Breaking. FBI raid targets financial fraud ring. Sources report simultaneous civil rights investigation. Coleman reviews security footage showing clear racial profiling as national media broadcasts the unfolding dual investigation to millions. The Atlas Building's 15th floor conference room transforms into an impromptu federal command center. Coleman stands at the head of the table, composed and authoritative. Seated before him, Westfield, Barrett, Tanner, the female officer who came forward, and two recently arrived police department officials. The atmosphere crackles with tension. For clarity, I'll formally introduce myself. Coleman's voice fills the room with quiet authority. Special Agent in Charge Derek Coleman, 15-year veteran of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I've led investigations resulting in 127 federal convictions for financial crimes, public corruption, and civil rights violations. He activates a display screen showing his credentials, commendations, and appointment letter. I personally requested assignment to this investigation after multiple reports indicated a pattern of both financial irregularities and discriminatory practices in this building and surrounding area. Barrett shifts uncomfortably. Westfield maintains his practiced poker face. Tanner stares at the table. My position grants me direct operational authority from the FBI Director and Department of Justice leadership, Coleman continues. I'm authorized to pursue all relevant lines of investigation, including those that emerged unexpectedly. He taps his tablet, bringing up a new display. Mr. Barrett, over the past 12 months, you've reported suspicious individuals to local police exactly 17 times. Coleman lets the number hang in the air before continuing. All 17 were people of color. All 17 were legitimate visitors or workers. None resulted in criminal charges. Barrett's face drains of color. This established pattern provided predicate for our dual investigation, Coleman explains, turning to the police officials. The frequency and consistency of these incidents raised concerns beyond isolated poor judgment. The senior police official, a deputy commissioner who arrived 20 minutes earlier, removes his glasses. Agent Coleman, I want to assure you the department takes these allegations extremely seriously. I'm certain you do now, Coleman acknowledges. However, the pattern suggests systemic issues requiring more than assurances. Coleman advances to the next screen. For context, the FBI's Civil Rights Division has been investigating patterns of racial profiling in cooperation with law enforcement agencies nationwide. Yesterday's incident provided a controlled documentation opportunity. The revelation lands with seismic impact. Westfield straightens in his chair, suddenly understanding the fuller implications. To be absolutely clear, Coleman says, addressing Westfield directly, your financial crimes and Mr. Barrett's discriminatory practices will be treated as potentially connected investigations. The possibility that a discriminatory security environment was fostered to deflect scrutiny from financial operations is now an active investigative angle. Westfield's attorney, who arrived moments before the meeting, scribbles furiously. Coleman activates a video screen. Officer Tanner's body camera footage from yesterday. The room watches in silence as the confrontation plays out. Without the heat of the moment, the absence of reasonable suspicion becomes glaringly obvious. The female officer's discomfort is clearly visible in the background of several shots, supporting her decision to come forward. Coleman pauses the footage at a particularly damning moment, Tanner deliberately ignoring Coleman's federal credentials while examining his driver's license. My decision not to immediately identify myself as FBI was deliberate, Coleman explains, his voice steady. It documented how a black professional is treated without the shield of federal authority. This investigation isn't about me. It's about the 17 others without badges who faced similar treatment. The room falls silent. The power dynamic has completely transformed. Coleman is revealed not as a victim seeking redress, but as a federal authority methodically documenting systemic discrimination for potential prosecution. Mr. Westfield, your companies are suspected of defrauding investors of approximately $47 million through elaborately disguised Ponzi schemes, Coleman states matter-of-factly. Mr. Barrett, your security practices demonstrate a pattern of discriminatory enforcement creating hostile access based on race. Officer Tanner, your body camera footage reveals escalation without reasonable suspicion in a manner consistent with documented racial profiling. Coleman closes his tablet, standing even straighter. The FBI doesn't pursue these investigations lightly. We pursue them because equal access and equal treatment under law are non-negotiable American principles. Principles that were violated in this building repeatedly, systematically, and demonstrably. The deputy commissioner clears his throat. We'll cooperate fully with your investigation, Agent Coleman. I anticipated you would, Coleman responds. His gaze sweeps the room, meeting each person's eyes in turn, from Westfield's calculating stare to Barrett's defeated slump to Tanner's simmering resentment. The decisions you all made yesterday and in the preceding months have consequences far beyond what you imagined. Those consequences begin today. As federal agents continue gathering evidence throughout the building, all three men realize they've unknowingly triggered their own professional destruction. The consequences unfold with the precision of dominoes falling in sequence, each impact triggering the next in an unstoppable cascade. Day 1. FBI forensic accountants descend on Westfield's financial empire. They discover the fraud extends deeper than initially believed. Elaborate shell companies, falsified returns, investor funds siphoned to offshore accounts. What began as a $47 million investigation quickly balloons to $68 million as additional victims emerge. Coleman coordinates with the Securities and Exchange Commission, expanding the investigation's scope to include Westfield's partners and enablers. The pattern suggests long-term, deliberate deception, Coleman explains to the assembled Financial Crimes Task Force. Mr. Westfield created an image of impenetrable legitimacy while systematically defrauding investors. The parallel with Barrett's security theater, creating an illusion of protection while actually perpetuating harm, doesn't escape anyone in the room. Day 3. Barrett receives formal notification of administrative leave pending investigation. The property management company distances itself rapidly, issuing a public statement about taking allegations seriously and reviewing security protocols. Internal review of building security footage reveals what Coleman already documented, a clear pattern of discriminatory enforcement. Barrett approaches people of color for verification at 8 times the rate of white visitors, despite no statistical difference in legitimate access. The Atlas Building's lobby, where Coleman was publicly humiliated, now features new security personnel and a prominently displayed non-discrimination policy. Day 5. The police department launches an internal affairs investigation into Tanner's conduct. The female officer's testimony proves pivotal, revealing this wasn't Tanner's first instance of escalating encounters with minorities without reasonable suspicion. 3 additional officers come forward with similar accounts, suggesting a departmental culture problem rather than isolated incidents. We're implementing immediate retraining, the deputy commissioner announces at a hastily called press conference, and reviewing all civilian complaints involving Officer Tanner from the past 5 years. Coleman watches the press conference from his temporary office in the federal building, noting how quickly institutions move to protect themselves once exposure becomes inevitable. Day 7. Coleman coordinates with the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, establishing a formal task force addressing the intersection of financial crimes and discriminatory practices. This elevation makes the case a priority at the federal level, allocating additional resources and expanding investigative authority. These aren't separate issues, Coleman explains to the assembled federal attorneys. The discrimination created a protective barrier for the financial crimes. Each reinforced the other. Day 9. Westfield attempts to leverage political connections, making calls to congressional representatives and a former federal judge. These efforts backfire spectacularly when Coleman reveals these very attempts as potential obstruction of justice. The calls, meticulously documented by federal surveillance authorized under the initial financial crimes warrants, only strengthen the case against him. Former allies distance themselves as evidence mounts. Mr. Westfield fundamentally misunderstands his position, Coleman tells the prosecution team. He believes influence still outweighs evidence. Day 12. Media coverage intensifies. Initial reports focused on the financial crimes angle, but the discrimination aspect gains traction as more victims of Barrett's profiling come forward. 3 previous incidents involved black professionals who were humiliated in the Atlas lobby under nearly identical circumstances to Coleman's experience. Coleman gives a brief professional statement focusing on the financial investigation while acknowledging additional matters under review. His measured tone and impeccable credentials make him a compelling figure, the embodiment of authority wrongfully challenged based on race. Day 14. Barrett agrees to a disastrous television interview, attempting to salvage his reputation by claiming he was just doing his job and would have reported anyone behaving suspiciously. When pressed for specific suspicious behaviors, he stammers about intuition and professional experience without offering concrete examples. The interview becomes a social media firestorm. By evening, the property management company terminates his employment, issuing a formal apology and announcing mandatory anti-bias training for all security personnel. Day 17. The police union initially defends Tanner, issuing a statement about split-second decisions and challenging security environments. This position becomes untenable when the body camera evidence and pattern of behavior become public. Department leadership, fearing federal oversight, implements immediate policy changes requiring documented reasonable suspicion before identity checks or detainment. Tanner receives notice of suspension pending the outcome of the internal investigation. His previous commendations offer no shield against the documented pattern now emerging from his own body camera archives. Day 21. Coleman meets privately with previous victims of Barrett's discrimination, gathering additional testimonies that strengthen the civil rights case. These individuals, professionals from various fields who experienced similar profiling, express profound gratitude for Coleman's willingness to use his position to address systemic issues, rather than simply identifying himself and moving on. "You could have flashed your badge and walked away," one woman tells him, voice thick with emotion. "Instead, you chose to stand with those of us who don't have badges." Coleman's expression remains professional, but his eyes reflect something deeper, the weight of responsibility that comes with his authority. Day 25. Westfield's legal team attempts to separate the financial crimes from the discrimination issue, filing motions to exclude any evidence connecting the two investigations. Coleman's team counters with communications revealing Westfield explicitly encouraged Barrett's vigilance to keep unwanted scrutiny away from the building, directly linking the discriminatory security practices to the protection of financial crimes. The connection is explicit, Coleman explains to the federal prosecutors. Westfield created an environment where legitimate visitors were excluded based on race, effectively reducing the likelihood his financial operations would face questioning. Day 30. The FBI completes the initial phase of both investigations. The evidence is overwhelming on both fronts. Millions in documented financial fraud and a clear pattern of discriminatory enforcement targeting people of color. Coleman submits comprehensive reports to both the Financial Crimes Division and the Civil Rights Division, recommending maximum charges against all primary perpetrators. The dual investigation becomes a case study in how different forms of misconduct often reinforce each other, the financial crimes creating resources to influence protection, the discrimination providing a shield against scrutiny, each making the other possible in a self-reinforcing cycle. Throughout this cascade of consequences, Coleman maintains his professional demeanor. He seeks justice, not revenge, systematic accountability, not personal vindication. His methodical approach, documented at every stage, creates an airtight case that neither money nor influence can dismantle. In a final meeting before formal charges are filed, Director Lawson reviews the evidence Coleman has assembled. "Exemplary work," Lawson acknowledges. Both investigations conducted by the book, despite the personal element. It was never about me, Coleman responds. It's about the standard we enforce. Lawson nods. The financial crimes charges are straightforward, but the civil rights case may face challenges. We've documented 17 incidents with identical patterns, Coleman points out. The evidence speaks for itself. Westfield and Tanner are both seeking plea arrangements, Lawson reveals, but they're asking for immunity from testifying about broader systemic issues. Coleman's expression hardens slightly, the first crack in his professional mask. They want to admit to individual actions while protecting the systems that enabled them. Exactly, Lawson confirms. Prosecutors are considering the offers. Coleman shakes his head once, decisively. Unacceptable. The pattern is the point. Individual accountability without systemic change only guarantees more victims. Have you ever witnessed racial profiling in a professional setting? Share your experience in the comments. The prosecutor's decision will determine whether justice addresses merely symptoms or finally confronts the disease itself. The federal courtroom sits silent as Coleman takes the stand in United States v. Westfield. 3 months of investigation culminate in this moment. Westfield, in a tailored suit now lacking its usual confidence, watches from the defense table. Special Agent Coleman, please summarize the financial evidence against the defendant, the prosecutor requests. Coleman speaks with precise clarity, his testimony built on irrefutable documentation. Our investigation revealed Mr. Westfield operated a sophisticated Ponzi scheme through his companies. He diverted approximately $68 million of investor funds to personal accounts and shell corporations. The fraud involved falsified returns, manipulated financial statements, and deliberate misrepresentations to investors. Westfield's attorney attempts to paint his client as a respected businessman who made administrative errors, but Coleman's methodical evidence demolishes this defense point by point. These weren't errors, Coleman explains, displaying financial transfers on the courtroom screens. The pattern demonstrates deliberate, systematic fraud sustained over 7 years. Mr. Westfield created elaborate structures specifically designed to conceal criminal activity. The judge denies Westfield bail, citing flight risk and the magnitude of charges. As federal marshals lead him away, Westfield glares at Coleman, who remains professionally detached, focused on justice rather than personal vindication. Across town, Officer Tanner faces an internal review board. The female officer who came forward provides damning testimony about patterns of discriminatory enforcement. Other officers have followed her lead, breaking the blue wall of silence to describe similar incidents. It wasn't just that day with Agent Coleman, she testifies. I've observed Officer Tanner escalate encounters with minorities at least 12 times without reasonable suspicion. When I raised concerns to supervisors, they were dismissed as oversensitivity. Tanner's defense crumbles as multiple incidents are presented, body camera footage, civilian complaints, departmental records, revealing the confrontation with Coleman wasn't isolated but part of a documented pattern. The board recommends immediate termination and potential criminal charges for civil rights violations. At the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, Barrett faces charges of discriminatory practices in building security. His attempts to justify his actions only further incriminate him as he struggles to articulate non-racial reasons for his suspicions. Mr. Barrett, did you request identification from white visitors at the same rate as minorities? The investigator asks. I approached people who looked suspicious, Barrett insists. And by what criteria did you determine suspicious? Barrett's explanation dissolves into vague references to professional instinct and behavior patterns he cannot specifically identify. The security footage, showing him consistently targeting minorities while allowing white visitors to pass unchallenged, speaks more eloquently than his stammered justifications. Coleman attends each hearing, providing testimony when required but primarily observing as the systems of accountability he activated do their work. His presence serves as a powerful reminder of how these cases began and the consequences of underestimating someone based on race. The police department enters a consent decree with federal oversight, committing to comprehensive retraining, policy reforms, and monitoring of stop patterns. Westfield's assets are frozen, with proceedings begun to return funds to defrauded investors. Barrett, now unemployable in the security industry, accepts a settlement requiring anti-discrimination training and financial penalties. Throughout the proceedings, Coleman maintains his professional composure. He's not seeking personal vindication, but systematic accountability. Each hearing represents not just consequences for individuals, but examination of the systems that enabled their behavior. In the final federal hearing addressing the civil rights violations, Coleman delivers testimony that silences the courtroom. This case isn't about one incident or one individual's experience. It documents a pattern where appearance determined access, where bias masqueraded as security, and where discrimination created protection for financial crimes. Each element reinforced the others in a system designed to exclude legitimate scrutiny while facilitating illegal activity. The judge nods gravely. "And your recommendation, Agent Coleman?" "That the systemic nature of these violations requires systemic remedies. Individual penalties without institutional reform will only perpetuate the underlying problems." The ruling that follows adopts Coleman's recommendation, requiring not just penalties for Westfield, Barrett, and Tanner, but mandated reforms in building security practices, police training, and financial oversight throughout the district. "The investigation doesn't end with these individuals," Coleman announces outside the courthouse, cameras capturing his words for national broadcast. 6 months later, Coleman stands before 200 FBI Academy graduates. His composed presence commands attention without demanding it, the embodiment of authority earned through competence rather than conferred by position alone. The Atlas financial investigation exemplifies how seemingly separate forms of misconduct often reinforce each other, Coleman explains. Financial crimes created resources for influence. Discriminatory practices provided shields against scrutiny. Each made the other possible. The cadets listen intently as Coleman outlines how the dual investigation transformed into a catalyst for broader reforms. The building management company implementing the court-mandated reforms doesn't stop at minimum compliance. They establish comprehensive bias training programs now being adopted industry-wide. Security personnel undergo quarterly assessments reviewing their interaction patterns. Anonymized data tracking demographic patterns of security stops becomes standard practice, with quarterly reviews triggering automatic investigations of statistical disparities. Measurable accountability creates measurable change, Coleman notes. In the 6 months since implementation, discriminatory security interactions decreased by 76% across properties adopting these protocols. The police department undergoes even more profound transformation. Under the consent decree, they replace reactive discipline with proactive monitoring. Body camera footage undergoes regular algorithmic review, identifying potential bias patterns before they become entrenched behavior. The female officer who testified against Tanner now heads a newly established professional standards unit with direct reporting authority to the commissioner. Courage in addressing internal problems prevented federal receivership, Coleman explains. Their reforms now serve as a model for departments nationwide. The FBI establishes a permanent civil rights compliance unit inspired by Coleman's work, specifically focused on investigating patterns rather than isolated incidents. Coleman's dual investigation approach becomes standard protocol, examining not just primary violations, but the enabling systems surrounding them. We've documented a 43% increase in successful prosecutions by addressing the protective ecosystems surrounding financial crimes, Coleman tells the graduates. Discrimination often functions as both motivation and shield for other criminal activity. Professional organizations representing building security firms develop anti-discrimination certification standards, with insurance companies offering rate reductions for certified companies. The financial incentive accelerates adoption across the industry, creating market pressure for reform alongside legal requirements. Coleman receives a commendation from the Attorney General, but emphasizes that institutional change matters more than individual recognition. When offered promotion to FBI headquarters, he declines, preferring to remain in the field where he can directly mentor new agents in the investigative approaches he's pioneered. Systemic problems require systemic solutions, Coleman tells a congressional committee reviewing civil rights enforcement. When institutions measure what matters and hold themselves accountable, transformation follows naturally. Statistics tell the story of progress. Discriminatory incidents in commercial buildings decrease markedly. Civilian complaints against police drop. Financial crime detection rates improve. The intersection of these improvements confirms Coleman's core insight that addressing discrimination improves overall law enforcement effectiveness across multiple dimensions. Tag someone who needs to see what accountability looks like in 2025. As institutional reforms continue reshaping industries, Coleman receives an unexpected invitation to keynote the annual conference for building security professionals. The conference hall hums with anticipation as Coleman approaches the podium. 500 security professionals, from corporate executives to frontline officers, fill the room. Among them sits a familiar face, Barrett, now employed in an entry-level position with a firm specializing in reformed security practices. True security is inclusive, not exclusive, Coleman begins, his voice measured yet engaging. It protects all legitimate users while identifying actual threats based on behavior, not appearance. He doesn't mention Barrett by name or reference their encounter directly. This isn't about reopening wounds, but charting a path forward. The industry has begun transforming itself, implementing the lessons from the Atlas case voluntarily, rather than waiting for legal mandates. The new building manager who replaced Barrett nods along from the front row. Atlas Financial Tower now operates under industry-leading protocols that emphasize objective behavioral indicators rather than subjective impressions. Their security team includes diversity in both staffing and training perspectives, creating multiple viewpoints that catch what a homogeneous team might miss. Effective security sees clearly, Coleman continues. Bias creates blind spots that actually reduce safety while creating harm. The reformed police department now partners with the FBI on community initiatives addressing the intersection of security and equal treatment. Their consent decree becomes a voluntary model other departments adopt proactively, recognizing that fair enforcement improves both community relations and operational effectiveness. Westfield serves his sentence while cooperating with broader financial crimes investigations. His testimony helps dismantle similar operations, returning millions to defrauded investors. His case study becomes standard material in securities regulation training, illustrating how discriminatory environments often indicate additional misconduct worth investigating. After the presentation, Coleman meets privately with several officers who came forward during the investigation. Their courage in addressing internal problems has earned them not ostracism, but advancement, as departments increasingly recognize that internal accountability strengthens rather than weakens their institutions. The hardest part was speaking up that first time, one officer admits. But seeing the improvements since then confirms it was worth it. Coleman returns to regular FBI duties with enhanced authority and perspective. His methodical approach to addressing both primary violations and enabling systems becomes standard procedure across multiple federal agencies. The ripple effects extend far beyond the original case, influencing how institutions approach accountability at every level. The industry publications that once celebrated aggressive security now feature articles on precision security, using targeted, behavior-based approaches that protect access while preventing discrimination. Insurance companies develop risk models showing that biased security practices actually increase liability rather than reducing it, creating financial incentives that align with ethical practices. Coleman occasionally drives past the Atlas building, now operating under new ownership after Westfield's assets were liquidated. The lobby where he once faced humiliation now displays a plaque commemorating the reforms that transformed industry standards. Not mentioning him by name, Coleman refused such recognition, but acknowledging the case that catalyzed change. The true measure of progress isn't in public acknowledgments, but in unremarkable daily experiences. Professionals of all backgrounds entering buildings without unnecessary challenges, security focusing on actual behavioral indicators, institutions holding themselves accountable rather than waiting for incidents to force change. Justice isn't just about punishment, Coleman tells a mentee at the FBI Academy. It's about transformation. True accountability creates change that lasts. This becomes his defining philosophy, that consequences must lead to improvements, not just penalties. That systems matter as much as individuals. That accountability works best when it transforms rather than merely punishes. The most profound impact remains largely invisible. All the confrontations that never happen, the careers unimpeded by bias, the talent not lost to discriminatory barriers. Progress measured not by what occurs, but by what no longer needs to be endured. If this story resonated with you, you're going to love what's coming next on Beat Stories. We're bringing you more true accounts of justice served, strategic empowerment, and systematic accountability in professional settings. Hit that subscribe button right now to never miss our weekly doses of justice being served to those who abuse their authority. These aren't just stories, they're masterclasses in strategic empowerment. Like this video to help more people discover how documentation and strategic patience can transform personal discrimination into institutional change. Your engagement helps us reach those who need these strategies most. You think you can play poker, boy? Let's see what you got. Billionaire Richard Blackstone shoves 11-year-old Jaden Thompson into the leather chair at his poker table. The child's feet barely touch the floor as Manhattan's elite crowd around with their phones out. One hand, you versus me. If you win, impossible. I'll pay for any school you want. When I win. Blackstone's cold eyes find Angela Thompson wiping down glasses in the kitchen. Your mama gets fired. Tonight. He flicks poker chips at Jaden's face. Each one leaves a red mark. Come on, kid. Show these people why you belong in the kitchen with mommy, not at the table with your betters. The room explodes with laughter. Cameras start rolling. Everyone expects to watch a poor black child get crushed by a billionaire in minutes. They have no idea they're about to witness something that will destroy everything they believe about intelligence and worth. Have you ever seen the exact moment when an underestimated genius explodes and changes everything forever? Picture this. 40 floors above the chaos of Manhattan, where the city's noise becomes a distant whisper and power lives behind bulletproof glass. Richard Blackstone's penthouse sprawls across 8,000 square feet of pure luxury. Marble floors so polished they reflect like mirrors. Crystal chandeliers worth more than most people's houses. And floor-to-ceiling windows offering a god's-eye view of Central Park. Tonight, the main living room has been transformed into a professional poker arena. 3 felt tables occupy the center, each surrounded by leather chairs that cost $15,000 apiece. Automatic card shufflers hum quietly in the corners. Crystal decanters filled with whiskey older than most of the staff catch the light from above. The air smells of expensive cologne, aged tobacco, and the kind of money that never worries about tomorrow. This isn't just a game night. This is where New York's most powerful people come to prove they're smarter than everyone else, betting amounts that could feed families for years while calling it charity. The entry fee tonight? $10,000 per person, supposedly benefiting youth education programs, though most of that money will end up funding another wing of some prep school that already has too much. Richard Blackstone stands at the center of it all like a king surveying his domain. At 52, he's got the kind of confidence that only comes from never being told no. His handmade Italian suit costs more than most cars. His Patek Philippe watch could buy a house. When he speaks, people listen. Not because he's wise, but because he signs their paychecks or funds their projects or holds their mortgages. He made his billions in tech, but his attitude comes from something much older and uglier. The belief that wealth equals intelligence, and skin color determines worth. Vincent, deal another round, Blackstone calls out to the man shuffling cards with machine-like precision. Vincent Vinny Castellano moves like poetry in motion when he handles cards. 30 years of professional poker have turned his fingers into instruments of art. The cards seem to dance between his hands, flowing in perfect arcs across the felt. He's here because these rich folks pay him $5,000 a night to lose gracefully to them, making them feel like poker gods, while never letting them lose so much they stop inviting him back. It's a delicate balance. Stroke their egos, take their money, and pretend their amateur mistakes are brilliant strategies. But tonight feels different. Tonight, Vinny keeps glancing at the small figure sitting quietly in the corner. Jaden Thompson perches on the edge of a chair that swallows his 11-year-old frame, his legs dangling like a child's shoulder. His clothes tell a story. The button-down shirt is clean but faded from too many washings. The khakis have been carefully mended at the knee, and his sneakers have seen better days but still shine from his mother's careful attention. Everything about him screams, "Doesn't belong here," which is exactly how these people like it. But if you look closer, really look, you'll notice something else. Jaden's eyes never stop moving. They track every card dealt, every chip bet, every facial expression around the tables. His head tilts slightly when someone bluffs. His fingers tap soundless rhythms against his leg, not nervous energy but calculations. While the adults assume he's just a bored child watching incomprehensible adult activities, Jaden is building a database of human behavior that would impress psychology professors. Patricia Whitmore adjusts her diamond necklace for the 15th time tonight. The gesture so automatic she doesn't realize she does it every time she's about to fold a losing hand. James Morrison's left eye twitches microscopically when he's bluffing, a tell so subtle even Vinny hasn't caught it, but Jaden cataloged it months ago. Dr. Elizabeth Foster touches her earring when she's calculating odds, always 3 quick taps with her index finger. These people have been playing poker in front of Jaden for 3 years, treating him like a piece of furniture that breathes. They discuss million-dollar deals, personal scandals, and business strategies as if he's deaf and dumb. But Jaden absorbs everything, not just the poker, but the psychology behind it. The way wealth makes people careless, how privilege blinds them to their own weaknesses, how people who've never been truly challenged develop habits that would be fatal against real competition. Angela Thompson moves through the kitchen with quiet efficiency, her presence so unobtrusive that guests sometimes forget there are actual people preparing their food and cleaning their glasses. At 38, she carries herself with the dignity of someone who's learned to find pride in honest work, even when that work is invisible to those who benefit from it. Her hands, roughened by years of cleaning supplies and hard labor, move with practiced grace as she arranges appetizers and refills drinks. She's been watching her son watch these people, and she's seen something the wealthy guests have missed. Jaden isn't just observing, he's learning. Every poker session becomes a masterclass in reading people, in understanding the mathematics of probability, in controlling emotions under pressure. While other 11-year-olds play video games, her son has been getting a graduate-level education in psychology and game theory from some of the city's most successful people, and they have no idea they're teaching him. The power dynamics in this room are as rigid as the marble floors. There are those who sit at the tables and those who serve them, those who make decisions, and those who clean up the consequences, those who matter and those who don't. Jaden and Angela exist in that second category, visible when needed, invisible when not, human furniture that keeps the important people comfortable. But tonight, those carefully maintained barriers are about to explode. Because while Richard Blackstone sees a poor black child who should know his place, what's actually sitting in that oversized chair is a mathematical prodigy who's been studying his weaknesses for 3 years. A psychological genius who's learned to read micro-expressions better than FBI profilers, a strategic mind that's been absorbing advanced game theory while pretending to be background decoration. The stage is set. The players are in position. And Richard Blackstone is about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one you never thought to notice. The evening has been flowing with its usual rhythm of self-congratulation and casual cruelty when Richard Blackstone notices Jaden studying the poker manual lying on the side table. The boy's fingers trace the pages showing hand rankings and betting strategies, his young mind absorbing information like a sponge. "Look at this," Blackstone announces loudly, his voice cutting through the sophisticated chatter. "The help's boy thinks he can read strategy books. How precious." He strides over and snatches the book from Jaden's hands, waving it in the air like evidence at a trial. "Tell you what, kid, since you're so fascinated by poker, why don't you show us what you've learned?" Entertainment for the adults. The room's energy shifts as guests abandon their conversations to gather around. Phone cameras emerge from expensive purses and jacket pockets. This is the kind of spontaneous cruelty that makes for great social media content. Actually, Blackstone's eyes light up with malicious inspiration. Let's make this really educational. One hand of Texas Hold'em. The boy versus me. Patricia Whitmore claps her hands together. Oh, how fun! Like teaching a dog new tricks. Here's the deal, Blackstone continues, his voice getting louder as he feeds off the crowd's anticipation. If this kid somehow beats me, which is about as likely as pigs flying, I'll fund a full scholarship to any prep school in the city. Murmurs of amusement ripple through the crowd. $10,000 in educational costs is pocket change to these people, a safe bet Blackstone knows he'll never have to pay. But when I win, and I will win, there are consequences. His cold gaze finds Angela in the kitchen doorway, and the room falls silent. Your mother packs her things tonight, finds herself a new job, somewhere far from here. Angela's wine glass trembles in her hands. 4 years of steady employment, health insurance, the small room in the building staff quarters that she and Jaden call home, everything hangs in the balance of a card game designed to humiliate her son. Come on now, Blackstone says, grabbing Jaden's arm and pulling him toward the main poker table. Don't be shy. Show these nice people what your kind can do when you try to think. Vinny looks uncomfortable for the first time all evening. Mr. Blackstone, maybe we should deal the cards, Vincent, unless you want to find yourself a new gig, too. The professional poker player's jaw tightens, but he begins shuffling with sharp, angry movements. His 30 years in the game have shown him many ugly sides of human nature, but this feels different. This feels wrong. $500 each, Blackstone announces, pushing a stack of chips toward Jaden. Real money for a real game. Though I suppose for someone like you, $500 is quite a fortune. James Morrison laughs. Careful, Richard. Don't break the bank for the kid. Jaden looks across at the man who's about to destroy his family's life for sport. The chips feel heavy in his small hands. The cameras are recording. The laughter is getting louder, but as he settles into the leather chair that's too big for his frame, something changes in his eyes. The scared little boy disappears, replaced by something else entirely, something that's been watching, learning, and waiting for exactly this moment. 3 years ago, in a cramped apartment that smelled of medicine and old photographs, 8-year-old Jaden Thompson sat cross-legged on a threadbare carpet, watching his grandfather's weathered hands shuffle a deck of cards with the precision of a surgeon. Poker isn't about the cards, little man, William Thompson said, his voice soft but firm as he dealt 2 cards to each of them. It's about reading souls. Every person on this earth has tells, little habits that give away their secrets when they think nobody's watching. William had learned poker in the foxholes of Korea, where reading an enemy's intentions could mean the difference between life and death. After the war, he'd cleaned office buildings at night and played cards in Washington Square Park on weekends, turning $5 buy-ins into grocery money through pure skill and observation. See this? William pointed to his own face as he made an exaggerated expression. When people lie, their bodies betray them. A twitch here, a touch there. Most folks are walking books. You just got to learn how to read. Young Jaden absorbed every word like gospel. While other kids his age played video games, he studied his grandfather's hands as they demonstrated probability. If there are 52 cards and you see 5, how many are left? What are the chances the next card helps you? William would ask. And Jaden's mind would calculate the answers faster than most adults could think. But it was more than mathematics. William taught Jaden to notice everything. How people's voices changed when they were nervous, how their breathing shifted when they were excited, how their eyes moved when they were calculating lies. Rich folks think their money makes them smart, William would say with a knowing smile, but money can't buy the ability to control your face when you're scared. The lessons continued every Sunday for 2 years until the cough started. Then the hospital visits. Then the diagnosis came too late because they couldn't afford the right doctors, the right tests, the right treatments. Don't let them tell you what you're worth, Jaden, William whispered from his hospital bed, pressing a worn $5 poker chip into his grandson's palm. This old thing's from Vegas, 1973. Won it fair and square from a man who thought I was just another janitor. Show them who you are." William died 3 days later, leaving behind a grandson with a photographic memory for human behavior and a burning desire to prove that intelligence doesn't come with a price tag. The real education began when Angela started bringing Jaden to work with her. While she cleaned million-dollar apartments and served at exclusive parties, Jaden became invisible furniture, present but unnoticed, watching and learning from people who treated him like a piece of decoration. At the Blackstone penthouse, he discovered a goldmine of psychological data. These wealthy players had never faced real consequences for their poker mistakes, so their tells were huge, obvious, and completely unconscious. Patricia Whitmore touched her necklace every time she was about to fold. James Morrison's left eye twitched when he bluffed. "Doctor." Foster tapped her earring 3 times when calculating odds. Most importantly, Richard Blackstone himself had a tell so massive it was almost comical. He touched his expensive watch whenever he felt uncertain or weak. The gesture was so automatic that he did it during business calls, at dinner parties, even while arguing with his wife. It was his security blanket, and he had no idea he was doing it. Every day after school, while Angela worked her second job cleaning offices downtown, Jaden spent hours at the public library. Free internet became his poker university. He studied professional tournament videos, memorized probability charts, and practiced on free online sites using fake accounts. His young mind absorbed advanced concepts that took most players years to understand: pot odds, implied odds, reverse psychology, leveling theory. The librarians thought he was researching a school project. His teachers assumed he was just a quiet kid who liked computers. Nobody suspected that an 11-year-old was developing expertise that would challenge seasoned professionals. But the real motivation wasn't fame or money or even revenge. Every night, Jaden watched his mother count and recount their small pile of bills, watched her skip meals so he could eat, watched her work 16-hour days to keep them afloat. Every poker video he studied, every probability he memorized, every tell he cataloged was for her. Tonight, with their entire future hanging on 5 cards and a billionaire's cruelty, all those hours of secret preparation would finally have their moment. William's poker chip sat heavy in Jaden's pocket as he faced the man who thought intelligence was inherited through bank accounts. Time to show them what a janitor's grandson could really do. Vinny's hands move with professional precision as he shuffles the deck one final time, the cards flowing like water between his fingers. The sound cuts through the penthouse's tense silence. 52 possibilities about to determine a family's fate. "Gentlemen, this is Texas Hold'em," Vinny announces, his voice carrying the authority of 3 decades at poker tables. "Each player receives 2 hole cards, followed by 5 community cards dealt in stages. Best 5-card hand wins." He slides 2 cards face down to each player. The soft whisper of cardboard against felt sounds like thunder in the suddenly quiet room. 20 phones are recording now, capturing what everyone assumes will be swift justice delivered to an uppity child. Jaden peeks at his cards with the careful precision his grandfather taught him. 7 of spades, 8 of spades. His face reveals nothing, but inside, his mind immediately begins calculating. These are what poker players call suited connectors. 2 cards in sequence and the same suit. Not a powerhouse hand, but one with serious potential if the right community cards appear. Across the table, Blackstone glances at his cards and can't suppress a slight smile. Ace of clubs, king of diamonds. Big Slick, as it's known in poker circles, one of the strongest starting hands possible. His confidence surges as he mentally counts the scholarship money he'll never have to pay. "Pre-flop betting begins with you, Mr. Blackstone," Vinny states. Blackstone doesn't hesitate. He pushes $50 worth of chips forward with theatrical flair. "Let's start with something small. Don't want to scare the boy away too quickly." The crowd chuckles at his casual cruelty. Patricia Whitmore whispers loudly, "How generous of you, Richard, starting slow for the child." All eyes turn to Jaden. This is his first decision point, and everyone expects him to fold immediately. Why would a poor kid risk $50? Probably more money than his family sees in a week. But Jaden is remembering his grandfather's lessons about reading people. Blackstone's nostril flared when he made that bet, the subtle tell of someone confident in their hand strength. The way he leaned back slightly after pushing chips forward. Classic dominance posturing. Most telling of all, Blackstone didn't touch his watch, meaning he felt completely secure. Jaden pushes $50 forward to match the bet. I call. The first murmur of surprise ripples through the crowd. The kid isn't folding. This might actually be interesting. Vinny burns one card and deals the flop. 3 community cards face up in the center of the table. The cards fall in sequence. 6 of spades, 9 of hearts, 5 of clubs. Let me explain what this means for each player because this is where the hand gets fascinating. Jaden's 7 and 8 of spades, combined with the 6, 9, and 5 on the board, gives him what's called an open-ended straight draw. He needs either a 4 or a 10 to complete a straight 5 cards in numerical sequence. With 8 cards in the deck that can help him, he has about a 31% chance of making his hand by the end. Blackstone's ace-king, meanwhile, has completely missed this flop. He has what poker players call overcards, cards higher than anything on the board, but no pair, no nothing. He's essentially holding ace high, which in poker terms means he has almost nothing. But here's the crucial part. Blackstone doesn't realize how weak his position is. In his mind, ace-king is still a premium hand, and he's facing a child who couldn't possibly understand advanced poker strategy. 50 more, Blackstone announces, pushing chips forward with renewed aggression. He's trying to bully Jaden out of the pot before the kid gets lucky. This is where Jaden's 3 years of observation pay dividends. He's seen Blackstone make this exact move dozens of times, betting aggressively when feeling strong, trying to end hands quickly. But something's different this time. Blackstone's hand moved toward his watch for just a split second before stopping. A micro-tell that suggests uncertainty beneath the bravado. Instead of folding like everyone expects, Jaden does something that shocks the room. He raises to $150. Raise, he says quietly, pushing chips forward with steady hands. The penthouse falls dead silent. Even Vinny's eyebrows climb toward his hairline. What just happened defies all logic. An 11-year-old child just raised a billionaire in a high-stakes poker hand. Well, I'll be damned, James Morrison whispers. Blackstone's confident smile falters for the first time. This was supposed to be easy entertainment, a quick lesson in racial hierarchy delivered through cards. Why is this kid fighting back? Patricia Whitmore stops touching her necklace mid-gesture. Is he actually playing poker? Vinny leans forward slightly, his professional instincts fully engaged now. That raise wasn't random. The timing, the sizing, the situation, it showed understanding of concepts that take most players years to grasp. This child just executed what pros call a semi-bluff, betting with a drawing hand that could improve while also applying pressure to force mistakes. Your action, Mr. Blackstone, Vinny prompts. For the first time all evening, Richard Blackstone hesitates. His fingers drift toward his watch before he catches himself. The crowd that was laughing with him moments ago now watches him with curious eyes. The game is changing, the power dynamic is shifting, and somewhere in the back of everyone's mind, an impossible question begins to form. What if this kid actually knows what he's doing? Blackstone stares at the chips Jaden just pushed forward, his mind struggling to process what's happening. A $150 raise from an 11-year-old? This wasn't in the script. This was supposed to be a quick humiliation, not an actual poker match. His fingers twitch toward his watch before he forces them to stop. Call, he says, trying to sound casual, but his voice carries a note of uncertainty that wasn't there before. Vinny burns another card and reveals the turn, the 4th community card that can change everything. The card hits the felt with a soft thud. 4 of diamonds. The room doesn't understand what just happened, but Jaden's mind explodes with mathematical certainty. His 7-8 of spades now has the board reading 6, 9, 5, 4. He's completed his straight 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In poker terms, he has the nuts, the absolute best possible hand at this moment. Nobody can beat him, not with any 2 cards. It's mathematically impossible. But here's the beautiful part. Nobody else knows it. Blackstone still has ace-king with nothing, just ace-high. He's holding what amounts to trash in poker terms, but he doesn't realize how dire his situation has become. In his mind, he still has Big Slick, Still has the premium hand, still has the intellectual advantage. Interesting turn card, Vinny mutters, studying the board with professional eyes. He's starting to see the possibilities, and what he sees makes his pulse quicken. Instead of betting aggressively with his monster hand, Jaden does something that would impress world-class professionals. He checks, just taps the table gently, indicating he doesn't want to bet. This is called slow playing or trapping, and it requires ice-cold nerves and advanced psychological understanding. Jaden is deliberately showing weakness with an unbeatable hand, inviting Blackstone to bet into him and build a bigger pot. Blackstone takes the bait completely. 200, he announces, shoving chips forward with renewed confidence. In his mind, the kid's check confirms what he expected. Jaden is weak, probably scared, definitely in over his head. Time to end this charade and collect his victory. The crowd murmurs approval. This is more like it. The billionaire reasserted dominance over the presumptuous child, but Jaden is reading Blackstone like a children's book. 3 years of observation have cataloged every micro-expression, every unconscious gesture. When Blackstone made that bet, his nostrils flared slightly, the tell of someone feeling strong, his shoulders squared in dominance posturing. Most importantly, he didn't touch his watch, meaning he felt completely confident. Blackstone has no idea he just walked into a perfectly laid trap. Raise, Jaden says quietly. 400. The words hit the room like a physical blow. Patricia Whitmore's wine glass freezes halfway to her lips. James Morrison's mouth falls open. Even Vinny, who's seen everything in 30 years of professional poker, blinks in surprise. An 11-year-old child just raised a billionaire to $400. This isn't child's play anymore. This is serious money, serious poker, serious psychology. What the hell? Blackstone's composure cracks visibly. His hand jerks toward his watch before he catches himself. This was supposed to be educational entertainment, not a real poker match where he might actually lose. Vinny leans forward, his professional instincts screaming that something extraordinary is happening. Gentlemen, the action is to you, Mr. Blackstone. This is ridiculous, Blackstone snaps, but his voice lacks its earlier confidence. He's 11 years old. He doesn't know what he's doing. But even as he says it, doubt creeps into his mind. The kid's betting pattern shows understanding of concepts that Blackstone himself doesn't fully grasp. The timing, the sizing, the psychology, it's all too sophisticated for random luck. Patricia Whitmore whispers to her husband, "Maybe we should stop this. The child seems to actually know how to play." "No," Blackstone says loudly, his ego overriding his judgment. "I'm not being outplayed by the help's brat. Call. The pot now contains $800, real money that could pay Angela's rent for 3 months. But more than money is at stake here. Reputations, worldviews, fundamental beliefs about intelligence and worth hang in the balance." Vinny deals the final card, the river. 5 of hearts. A complete blank that changes nothing about the hand strength. Jaden still has his unbeatable straight. Blackstone still has absolutely nothing. "This is it," Vinny announces. "Final betting round." Jaden studies Blackstone's face with the intensity of a surgeon. Every micro-expression, every unconscious gesture gets cataloged and analyzed. Blackstone's breathing has quickened slightly. His pupils are dilated with stress. His fingers keep drifting toward his watch before stopping, the universal tell of uncertainty and fear. The man is breaking down, and he doesn't even realize it. "Check," Jaden says, tapping the table softly. It's the perfect move. By checking with the nuts, he's giving Blackstone one final chance to bet into him, to commit even more money to a pot he cannot win. It's psychological warfare at its finest, showing weakness while holding ultimate strength. Blackstone's mind races. The kid checked again. That has to mean weakness, right? Children don't have the sophistication for advanced deception. This is his chance to end the humiliation and restore proper order. "All in," he declares, shoving his remaining $150 into the center. "Every last chip. Let's see what you're really made of, boy." The room gasps. Blackstone just committed every chip he has to a pot he cannot win, against an 11-year-old who's been outplaying him since the first card was dealt. Jaden looks at the chips, then at Blackstone's face, then at the cameras recording every moment of what's about to become poker legend. "I call," he says simply. The trap is complete. The game is over. All that remains is the revelation. The moment Jaden calls Blackstone's all-in bet, the penthouse falls into absolute silence. $850 sits in the center of the table, more money than Angela makes in 2 months, waiting for the cards to be revealed. But before anyone can show their hands, Vinny stands up from his chair, his professional reputation demanding he speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice cuts through the tension like a blade, "I need to explain what you're witnessing here." He gestures toward the community cards spread across the felt. "This board shows 69545. Now, I've been playing professional poker for 30 years, and what this young man just executed." He pauses, shaking his head in genuine amazement. "This is a master-level strategy." Patricia Whitmore lowers her wine glass, her earlier amusement replaced by genuine curiosity. "What do you mean, Vincent?" "Look at the betting pattern," Vinny explains, his voice gaining authority as he speaks to the crowd. Jaden called the initial bet, then raised on the flop when he had a drawing hand. That's called a semi-bluff, and it requires deep understanding of pot odds and psychology. When the turn card came, he checked with what I suspect is a very strong hand, then raised it when his opponent bet. That's textbook slow playing. James Morrison leans forward, his earlier smirks fading. "Are you saying the kid actually knows how to play?" "I'm saying," Vinny's voice grows more serious, "that I've seen this exact sequence of moves in World Series of Poker main events. Professional players pay thousands of dollars for coaching to learn these concepts. This child just executed them flawlessly against a man who thinks he owns the world." The crowd's energy shifts dramatically. Phones that were recorded for entertainment value now capture something else entirely, the possibility that they're witnessing genuine brilliance from an unexpected source. Dr. Elizabeth Foster, who's been silent until now, speaks up. "Vincent, are you suggesting this 11-year-old is actually outplaying Richard?" "Ma'am, I'm not suggesting anything," Vinny replies firmly. "I'm telling you that if this young man has the hand I think he has, what we just watched was a clinic in advanced poker psychology. He read his opponent, controlled the pot size, and extracted maximum value from someone who never suspected the trap being set." Blackstone's face goes pale as the implications sink in. The laughter that surrounded him minutes ago has evaporated. The crowd that was enjoying his dominance display now looks at him with different eyes, eyes that are starting to see weakness where they once saw strength. "This is impossible," Blackstone stammers. "He's just a kid, he's just what?" Angela's voice carries from the kitchen doorway where she's been watching in silence. For the first time in 4 years of employment, she speaks directly to Blackstone's guests. "Just brilliant? Just gifted? Just someone you never bothered to notice because of the color of his skin?" The room's atmosphere completely transforms. What began as cruel entertainment has become something else entirely, a reckoning with assumptions, prejudices, and the dangerous habit of judging intelligence by circumstances rather than ability. Vinny looks directly at Blackstone. "Sir, it's time to show your cards." The moment of truth has arrived, and everyone in the room except Blackstone is starting to suspect they're about to witness something extraordinary. "Show your cards," Vinny commands, his voice carrying the authority of 3 decades at poker tables worldwide. Blackstone's hands tremble slightly as he reaches for his hole cards. His mind still can't accept what's happening. An 11-year-old child cannot possibly have outplayed him. It's genetically impossible. It's socially impossible. It's everything he's built his worldview on crashing down in real time. He flips over his cards with desperate confidence. Ace of clubs. King of diamonds. "Ace-King," Vinny announces to the room, "also known as Big Slick. With the final board of 69545, Mr. Blackstone has ace-high." The crowd murmurs in confusion. Ace-high sounds impressive to people who don't play poker, but Vinny's tone suggests it's not good news. "In poker terms," Vinny explains clearly, "ace-high means Mr. Blackstone has essentially nothing. No pair, no straight, no flush. Just his ace as a high card. It's about as weak as a hand can be in this situation." The reality hits Blackstone like a physical blow. He just bet nearly $1,000 with nothing. But that's impossible. Ace-King is a premium hand. It's supposed to be strong. How can he have nothing? All eyes turn to Jaden, who sits quietly in his oversized chair looking impossibly young and impossibly calm. The cameras focus on his small hands as he reaches for his cards. "Gentlemen and ladies," Jaden says, his voice clear and steady, "let me show you something my grandfather taught me about reading people." He flips over his cards. 7 of spades, 8 of spades. Vinny's eyes widen as he processes the hand. His voice drops to an awed whisper. 7, 8 of spades, with the board showing 6, 9, 5, 4, 5. He pauses, calculating quickly. That gives Jaden a straight. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The room erupts in gasps and shocked murmurs. Patricia Whitmore's wine glass slips from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. James Morrison's mouth falls open in complete disbelief. "A straight beats ace high," Vinny announces, his professional composure cracking with genuine amazement. Jaden wins, but the cards tell only part of the story. Vinny turns to address the stunned crowd, his voice carrying the weight of professional authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you just witnessed wasn't luck. This young man has been holding the winning hand since the 4th card was dealt. But instead of betting aggressively and scaring his opponent away, he slow-played it perfectly." He points to the sequence of bets. "He trapped Mr. Blackstone into committing every chip he had to a pot he could never win. That's not beginner's luck. That's advanced psychological warfare." Blackstone stares at the cards in complete shock, his brain unable to process the mathematical reality in front of him. "This can't be happening," he whispers. "This is impossible." "The mathematics are quite simple, actually," Jaden says, his young voice cutting through the chaos with surgical precision. "You had roughly a 6% chance of winning after the turn card. I had the nuts, the best possible hand. You bet everything on a 6% chance because you couldn't read the situation." The words hit Blackstone like bullets. Not just the poker lesson, but the calm, analytical way this 11-year-old is explaining how thoroughly he's been outplayed. "But more importantly," Jaden continues, standing up in his chair to address the room, "you couldn't see my strength because you were blinded by your assumptions about my worth." The crowd begins to applaud, slowly at first, then building to thunderous approval. These wealthy, sophisticated people are giving a standing ovation to a child who just demonstrated intellectual superiority in the most undeniable way possible. Vinny starts the applause, his professional respect overriding social boundaries. "In 30 years of poker, I've rarely seen such perfect execution. That was a masterclass in reading opponents and controlling psychology." Blackstone sits frozen in his chair, staring at the cards that just destroyed his entire worldview. The child he dismissed as genetically inferior just outplayed him using pure intelligence, patience, and skill. The game is over. The money is won. But the real victory is just beginning. The applause dies down as Vinny addresses the room with the gravity of a courtroom judge delivering a verdict. "Ladies and gentlemen, I need you to understand what just happened here," he says, his voice carrying 30 years of professional authority. "This wasn't a fluke. This wasn't beginner's luck. What Jaden just executed requires mastery of concepts that most players never learn." He gestures toward the felt table where the cards still lie in testament to genius. He read micro-expressions to identify his opponent's tells. He calculated pot odds in real time. He employed advanced psychological strategy to extract maximum value from a losing hand. These are skills that professional players spend decades developing. Patricia Whitmore, her earlier cruel laughter now a memory, steps forward with obvious discomfort. "Vincent, are you saying this child has been studying poker?" "Ma'am, I'm saying this child has been studying human psychology at a graduate level while we all assumed he was just furniture." Vinny's words cut through the room's pretensions like a surgeon's scalpel. For the first time since the cards were dealt, Jaden stands up fully in his chair and addresses the crowd that has spent years ignoring his existence. "For 3 years I've sat in corners of rooms like this, watching you play poker and assuming I was too young or too poor or too black to understand what I was seeing." His voice carries a quiet strength that makes even the most powerful people in the room listen. "But my grandfather taught me that poker reveals character. Tonight, every person in this room revealed exactly who they are." James Morrison shifts uncomfortably. "Now wait just a minute." "No, sir," Jaden interrupts with polite firmness. "You wait. You laughed when Mr. Blackstone called me an animal. You recorded videos expecting to watch a child get humiliated for your entertainment. You assumed my worth based on my mother's job and the color of my skin. The room falls silent as the weight of their collective behavior settles on their consciences. But poker taught me something else, Jaden continues, his young voice gaining power. It taught me that assumptions are dangerous. Mr. Blackstone assumed I was inferior because of my circumstances. That assumption just cost him $1,000 and his reputation. Angela Thompson steps out of the kitchen where she's been silently watching her son's transformation from invisible child to undeniable force. My son taught himself poker theory using library books and free internet videos, she says, her voice steady with pride. While you assumed his limitations, he was mastering skills. You pay consultants thousands of dollars to teach you poorly. Dr. Elizabeth Foster, shame evident in her voice, asks, "How long have you been watching our games, Jaden?" 3 years, ma'am. Every Thursday night poker game, every weekend tournament, every casual hand during dinner parties. I've been cataloging tells, memorizing betting patterns, studying the psychology of players who never faced real consequences for their mistakes. That's impossible, Blackstone finally speaks, his voice hollow with shock. You're just a child. Children don't have that kind of capacity for what? Jaden's question hangs in the air like a challenge. For intelligence? For analysis? For learning? Or just for being better than you thought someone like me could be? The question hits Blackstone like a physical blow, exposing the racist foundation of his disbelief. Vinny delivers the final verdict. Mr. Blackstone, in poker we have a saying, play the player, not the cards. You played the stereotype instead of the person sitting across from you. That's why you lost. Angela adds quietly, My son has been accepted to Harvard's early admission program. We just couldn't afford it before tonight. The room's atmosphere shifts completely as the implications sink in. They haven't just witnessed a poker game, they've witnessed the public destruction of everything they believed about intelligence, worth, and superiority. The real lesson isn't about poker, Jaden concludes, his voice carrying wisdom beyond his years. It's about the dangerous cost of underestimating people based on assumptions. Tonight, those assumptions cost Mr. Blackstone everything. Tomorrow, they might cost you just as much. The moral reckoning is complete. Justice has been served not through violence or revenge, but through pure, undeniable intellectual superiority demonstrated in the most public way possible. 6 months later, the transformation is complete and undeniable. Jaden Thompson sits in the library of Manhattan Preparatory Academy, his Harvard acceptance letter framed on the desk beside his grandfather's old poker chip. The morning sun streams through floor-to-ceiling windows as he tutors 3 classmates in advanced probability theory, concepts that once seemed impossible for a boy from his background to understand, let alone master. The key to reading people, he explains to his study group, isn't magic. It's observation, pattern recognition, and understanding that everyone reveals their thoughts through unconscious behaviors. His phone buzzes with a text from his mother. Channel 7 wants another interview about the scholarship fund. Are you free this weekend? The viral video changed everything. Within 24 hours of James Morrison posting the footage, #PokerGenius was trending worldwide. The clip of an 11-year-old black child systematically dismantling a racist billionaire's worldview has been viewed over 50 million times across all platforms, but the real impact goes far deeper than social media metrics. 3 weeks after that night, Dr. Elizabeth Foster approached Angela with an offer to manage her family's charitable foundation at triple her previous salary. We need someone who understands what real intelligence looks like, she said, and how easily we can overlook it. Angela accepted, and within months proved that her organizational skills and attention to detail, honed through years of managing wealthy households, translated perfectly to managing multi-million-dollar philanthropic initiatives. The William Thompson Foundation, named after Jaden's grandfather, has already awarded 47 full scholarships to gifted children from working families. The selection criteria? Not test scores or essays, but demonstrated ability to learn, adapt, and overcome obstacles. We look for kids who've been underestimated, Angela explains to reporters. The ones sitting quietly in corners, absorbing everything, while adults assume they're not smart enough to matter. Applications to chess and poker clubs in community centers nationwide increased by 400% after the video went viral. Libraries report massive spikes in strategy game book checkouts. The Jaden effect has become a real phenomenon in educational psychology circles. But perhaps the most satisfying transformation involves Richard Blackstone himself. The man who once owned a tech empire worth billions now works as a mid-level consultant at a firm that wouldn't have returned his calls 2 years ago. His company's board requested his resignation within weeks of the video's release, as clients and partners distanced themselves from his public display of racism. His wife filed for divorce 6 months later, citing irreconcilable differences. Legal code for, "I can't be married to a man the entire world knows is a racist." His children, embarrassed by their father's behavior, refused to speak to him. The penthouse where he once hosted poker games for Manhattan's elite has been sold to pay legal fees and settlement costs. The new owners converted it into a learning center for gifted children from underserved communities. A beautiful irony that wasn't lost on anyone who knew the building's history. Blackstone now lives in a studio apartment in Queens, eating microwave dinners and watching the news coverage of Jaden's continued success with the bitter knowledge that he created his own downfall. Meanwhile, Jaden's academic achievements continue to astound his teachers. Perfect scores in advanced calculus and behavioral psychology, captain of both the debate team and chess club. Early admission offers from Harvard, MIT, Stanford, and Yale, not because of his poker skills, but because of the analytical mind that made those skills possible. The poker was just a demonstration, explains Dr. Sarah Carter, Jaden's academic advisor. The real gift is his ability to process complex information, identify patterns, and apply theoretical knowledge to practical situations. That's useful in any field. The documentary The Boy Who Read Minds won 3 Emmy Awards and inspired educational reform discussions in dozens of school districts. The film's most powerful moment comes when Jaden returns to his old community center, teaching poker fundamentals to a new generation of children who might otherwise go unnoticed. "Every Saturday morning, I see kids who remind me of myself," Jaden tells the camera. Quiet ones, smart ones, kids whose potential is invisible to people who make assumptions about intelligence based on zip codes and bank accounts. The poker room at the community center where he learned the game is now named the William Thompson Memorial Room, with his grandfather's photograph hanging above the main table. Vinny Castellano, the professional poker player who witnessed Jaden's breakthrough, became an unlikely mentor and advocate. "That kid changed how I think about talent," he says in interviews. Real skill doesn't announce itself with fancy clothes and expensive accessories. Sometimes it sits quietly in the corner, watching and learning, waiting for someone to give it a chance. The scholarship winners from the William Thompson Foundation are already making their mark. Maria Santos, a 12-year-old from the Bronx, just won the National Math Olympiad. David Kim, whose parents worked double shifts at a restaurant, received early admission to MIT's engineering program. Aisha Johnson is developing an app to help other kids from single-parent homes access educational resources. "We're not just funding education," Angela explains in her foundation office, which overlooks the same park where her son once played while she worked multiple jobs. "We're proving that brilliance exists everywhere. You just have to know how to recognize it." The ripple effects continue spreading. Business schools now teach the Blackstone case study as an example of how unconscious bias can lead to catastrophic decision-making. The poker community has embraced Jaden as a symbol of the game's democratic nature, where skill matters more than background. Professional players regularly seek his insights on reading tells and psychological strategy. At 13, he's already been invited to observe World Series of Poker events, though he's focused on academics rather than professional gambling. "Poker taught me about people," he explains in a recent interview. "But people are everywhere, in science, in business, in politics. Understanding human psychology is useful no matter what career you choose." As for his immediate future, Harvard awaits. Full scholarship, naturally, along with a spot in their accelerated psychology program. His admission essay, titled "Why Assumptions Are Dangerous," has been shared in educational circles as a masterpiece of analytical thinking from a teenage mind. The final scene of the documentary shows Jaden at his prep school graduation, speaking as valedictorian to an audience that includes many of the same people who once dismissed him as invisible furniture. Intelligence isn't inherited through wealth, he tells the crowd, his voice now deeper but carrying the same quiet strength that shocked a penthouse full of billionaires. Brilliance isn't passed down through privilege. Genius grows wherever curiosity meets opportunity, even in the shadows where society doesn't think to look. The standing ovation lasts 5 full minutes. Today, Jaden Thompson is living proof that potential has no address, no uniform, no accent, only the courage to prove everyone wrong, one perfect decision at a time. And somewhere in Queens, Richard Blackstone watches the graduation coverage on his small television, finally understanding the cost of assumptions that once seemed so safe to make. Subscribe for more stories of hidden genius, unexpected victories, and the beautiful moment when prejudice meets undeniable truth. Because right now, somewhere, a brilliant mind is being overlooked, and all they need is someone willing to see their true potential.